Good morning, everyone. We are eagerly waiting to listen to our Honorable Sherpa, Sri Suresh Prabhu. I would request to start with our Honorable Chairman to receive him with a bouquet of flowers. We have with us also Sri Sherpa, Sri Suresh Reddy, Joint Secretary, MEA. And we have also with us a distinguished list of participants. I would like to invite our chairman to Sri Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar to make his welcome address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter. And let me begin by saying it's a matter of great honor and privilege for RIS to host Honorable Shri Suresh Prabhu. This is not the first time, and I'm pretty sure it will not be the last time. He's come here twice before. But RIS has been involved, and most of you may or may not know, that we have been involved, if only tangentially, with G20. And I thought that it was extremely important for us to have a debrief when I suggested to Honorable Shri Suresh Prabhu through Suresh Reddy, who's my colleague in the Ministry of External Affairs, and Su Sherpa. He readily agreed. So I'm particularly grateful to you, sir, for having taken the trouble to come in spite of your busy schedule. I'm not going to make a long speech because you've come here to listen to him, but I will take this opportunity to say that this is important for RIS because RIS has been involved with G20 for the last 4 or 5 years or so. We have been regularly represented by our officials from RIS at G20 meetings. And as I've just told Honorable Shri Suresh Prabhuji that we've also just brought out one RIS digest. It's a bi-monthly, exclusively devoted to G20. And you will also find that the issues of importance which have emerged from Osaka and also from G20 meetings earlier, such as SDGs, artificial intelligence, blue economy, digital economy, are areas where we have working groups in the RIS, which are actually a bunch of experts, including science and technology, actually, science diplomacy as well. So we've got working groups led by experts, and we are working as we speak on those issues. We hope to make a contribution because the G20, as you well know, actually has 2 pillars. You've got a finance pillar and a development pillar. And the development pillar is what we in the RIS are extremely interested in. We would like to make a contribution in the run-up to the G20 meeting in 2022 in India. And we see from Osaka the importance of G20. The importance of G20 you all know, but for me, it is also important because it is the main contemporary institution that has been set up after World War II. I'm not talking of UN, WTO, IMF, World Bank. This is contemporary. It reflects contemporary power realities, and therefore, it's vitally important that G20 succeed. Because if we don't, then it'll be status quo ante. I also think, and I put forward a proposition to you, I also think in the last 100 years or so, this is the first time, to my thinking, that you've got the geopolitical architecture, the security architecture, and most importantly for RIS, the economic architecture, all in full-fledged transition. I don't think we've had a time like this. One or the other things have always been in a state of flux. But I put it to you for your consideration that we've never had a situation like this when everything really is in full flux. And all the more reason why G20 should succeed. G20, RIS, also belongs to a think tank T20. Following G20, a number of fora have come into being. So one is the think tank T20 process in which RIS participates actively as well. We have therefore got B20, which is Business 20. We've got Civil Society 20, which is C20, and Women 20, W20, in all of which RIS actually participates. So I had the great honor and privilege of meeting Honorable Shri Suresh Prabhu in Paris when I was ambassador. He was reminiscing about it. What I will always remember is that he had actually come for a full-fledged series of meetings with the French railways. And we've had a lot of cooperation with French railways. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there was an economic forum meeting which was held in Paris. And I politely, because it was my job as ambassador, asked him whether he needed notes. And he dismissively said, "No, I think I can manage." And then he proceeded to take the forum completely by storm. It was a half an hour meeting, no notes, extempore, and I thought it'll always be in my mind, sir. So it's a real pleasure. I know that you have a tremendous economic background in addition to your current responsibilities as Sherpa G20. In the audience, we've had people who have been Sous Sherpas before. So we do have a knowledgeable audience, sir, and I am as eager as they are to listen to what you have to say. I will finish with just one remark. It was interesting for me that the G20 Osaka meeting focused on aging. So it's obvious that aging is of importance to Japan. And don't take me wrongly, I don't think it's of much relevance to India. We are a young population, I think aging is... But I therefore think it is important for us to start thinking about what the 2022 meeting in India should actually be focusing on. I don't think it's too early at all. So I also propose that RIS will have a series of consultations, with your permission, sir, with all stakeholders to see what are the issues on which the G20 meeting in 2022 in India should focus on. It is a great privilege for us to host it, but it's also a great opportunity for us to steer the course of G20. That's what we should be looking at. So with those words, sir, once again, it's my great honor and privilege to welcome you, and I am as eager as they are to listen to what you have to say. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. Actually, looking at the people who are sitting in front of me, I don't think I really need to speak, because all of you know so much about all these global issues, probably even more than I do. But thanks to my dear friend, Ambassador, who now heads RIS, for inviting me, and my colleague, Ambassador Reddy, and also Mr. Peter for making this possible. So let me thank all of you for being here for probably a little early in the day for Delhi, and therefore thank you very much for being here. As we have seen over a long period of time, that G20, though not an institution per se, because it doesn't have a structure of institutional structure like any organization as such, but still it has become a very important global forum to discuss many important global issues. And as we all know, it started first way back as only the finance ministers meeting, because it was essentially to deal with financial issues. And over a period of time now, it has become heads of state, and every country gets the privilege of hosting it. And as you said, India will be doing that in 2022 when India will complete 75 years of independence. So it's a very important landmark, going to be a landmark event for us as well. But the challenge of G20, which I had once mentioned when I was Prime Minister Sherpa for G20 in 2014, before I became Railway Minister, and when I was Railway Minister also I was continuing to be the G20 Sherpa. So once I had said, probably that time Turkey was a presidency, that a good part is in G20 that we discuss everything under the sun and everything above the moon also. So all global issues, and rightly so, because when you have such a strong representation of very important countries meeting together, there will always be a criticism from global community that you did not discuss something very important. And if you want to discuss everything important, then obviously you have to find out a space for it. Other challenge is that every country who take the presidency wants to put their stamp on it. And therefore, every country will like to add some issues from their own perspective. Like Japan did, as he said, about aging. Or Japan talked about, I will come to it, Society 4.0, 5.0. And therefore, any challenge of G20 is that so many issues globally which needs to be discussed. If you don't continue with the issues that have been discussed in the previous presidency, there will be also criticism that you just discussed and left it. So you have to continue with the old issues. At the same time, to make sure that the new presidency also puts the stamp on it, you have to take new issues. And therefore, the number of issues that get discussed in G20 have increased manifold over a period of time. But still, at a time when the world is struggling to find out a new global governance as to how this changing world could be managed effectively, what kind of institution we need to do that. And there, at the same time, while we need new global governance system, at the same time the big challenge is that so many existing institutions are being challenged, which we have accepted as a reality. One good example is WTO. We've always felt that WTO is going to be the guardian of global trade, but there are now question marks over existence of WTO itself. So the big challenge is, while world needs good global governance system, and such a complex world needs to be managed properly, at the same time existing institutions, their existence itself is being challenged, and therefore big hope of the global community obviously comes from G20. Because they feel G20 can deal with so many important issues and they will provide direction, and because they represent the most important countries in the world, it would really provide that important guidance. So I think G20 has become such an important event and important platform. So I think in that context, the recent Osaka summit took place. In fact, it happened in a way not necessarily as per the routine, because normally the summit happens at end of the year, sometime around that time. This time it happened in the mid of the year, June. Therefore, though normally when the summit is over, the presidency changes from one country to another. So next year is going to be Saudi, 21 is going to be Italy. But this time, though the summit is over, Japan continues to be the president of G20. So Osaka was very important in that context. Many issues I have discussed, and I don't think, because you are such a knowledgeable people, but few issues from India's perspective and also the global perspective, which happened, I would just give you a little bit feedback on that. One, inevitably, is economic issue. Because G20 represents almost 85% of the global GDP. 83, 84%, 85% maybe, of the global GDP. And therefore, economic issues are very important. And this particular summit happened at a time when IMF, World Bank, many other research institutions have raised doubts about the sustainability of global growth. How economy will continue to grow in the years to come is a big concern for all of us. And as we know, if the global economy doesn't grow, all countries will suffer. And particularly the aspirational country like India, which is looking forward to global growth as also one of the contributors to India's domestic growth. And therefore, when the global growth slows down, it is going to affect everybody, but also to India as well as developing countries. And in fact, I must say that when India participates in G20, it obviously represents India, but also tries to put aspirations of the other developing countries into focus. So we always feel that we represent not only us, because we are also one of the, or probably the largest developing country in the world in terms of population. And therefore, we must make sure that we also represent the developing countries, developing world's perspective into G20. And their developing countries are also worried because the global growth goes down. The countries which have benefited in the past because of robust global growth coming out of openness in the society, openness in the global trading system, and now it slows down, the countries which will be affected the most will be the developing countries. And therefore, we must find out a way of kick-starting the growth and trying to take it to the new level. So that obviously was one of the issues that were discussed. Our Prime Minister also gave a perspective on that. And in that context, there is another dimension to the global growth, is issue of global trade. In fact, there is something which is interestingly has happened over the course of little more than a decade. Before 2008, the global trade was growing at a rate faster than global economic growth. Now we are seeing, particularly in the last decade, that not only the volumes of global trade declined over a period of time in terms of commodities particularly, because that was one big driving force for global commodity growth, but also the prices fell. As a result of that, you are now seeing that global growth is probably slowed down, but global trade has also substantially gone down in terms of volume. So the trade to global economic growth ratio has also changed substantially in the last 10 years. So global trade has to also grow. And for global trade to grow, we need to make sure that institutions which govern global trade also strengthen. India has been the founder of GATT, General Agreement of Trade and Tariff, 1948, which is actually was later on became WTO. And now, since WTO was created almost 2 decades now, is virtually people had accepted as an institution which will govern the global trade. It's a rule-based organization. It's a democratic organization. It's a very unique organization in which every country, in a way, has a veto in that. So you cannot decide any matter unless there's a consensus on those matters. And therefore, such institution, which has actually proved its utility in the last almost 2 decades, is now being put under scanner, in which people are saying whether WTO's rules, everything has to be seen differently. India believes, and that's what we try to put into WTO in the G20 also, that multilateral trading system is something which we really need for making sure that world trade grows. And if the global trade grows, global economy will also grow. But you cannot have global trade growing unless WTO becomes strong and functional. It is nobody's argument that WTO should not change. In fact, I must tell you, in my previous avatar as a Commerce and Industry Minister, first time after resigning as a Railway Minister, I had become Minister for Commerce and Industry. Within a few weeks, I had to go to Buenos Aires for the ministerial in 2017, December. I saw there, to my dismay as well as concern, that there was not even a statement which we could agree on. And I said, if we don't have a common statement, communicate that at the end of the almost 200 countries participating, what is going to happen to WTO? So there itself I had announced that India will take a lead and will organize a mini-ministerial to make sure that WTO becomes more effective. On 19th of March, just less than three months from that date, we organized in New Delhi a mini-ministerial attended by 57 countries. So it cannot be called as a mini-ministerial because mini-ministerial normally about 15-20 countries. But we called almost all important countries in the world, representing different regions, different interests, and we tried to find out what could be the agenda for WTO. I am saying this because we are not only saying this in G20 that WTO should be effective, we have, as country, India has taken a number of initiatives to ensure that WTO becomes a centrality to the global trading system. And that is the only option. Suppose, for example, what is the alternative? If WTO goes, how are you going to deal with global trade? It's not rule-based, it's not system-based, how is it going to happen? And therefore, reforming WTO is a need, But what is reform is also important. And therefore, we are always saying that WTO's one very cardinal principle is special and differentiated responsibilities. One of the key component of WTO was, and that of course people are trying to forget, is also the development agenda of the WTO. And that's why the Doha round was important. And I said Doha round was rightly called as round because we went round and round, talked about development, but never got anything out of it. And therefore, unless we actually focus on making global trade work through a multilateral trading platform like WTO by reforming WTO, and what should be the agenda for reform should be discussed openly, and we can take it forward. Again, India followed up that meeting of mini-ministerial with another developing countries meeting in May 2019, just 2 months, less than 2 months ago, in New Delhi, in which again I had chaired it called meeting, and we again, both meetings, the DGWTO was present. And he has lauded the efforts that we took to make sure that WTO becomes more effective. So this is another important point that was discussed in the Osaka. Obviously, and I will not say it is surprising, that countries will have difference of opinion about all these issues. There are countries, and if there is no difference of opinion, even in Buenos Aires, we should have an agreement. So therefore, difference of opinion is obviously there, but in the larger interest of all the countries in the world, whether they are developing or developed countries, we should agree on a common agenda, and that was an effort that also was made even in G20 in Osaka. Other important global issue, and therefore G20 has to deal with global issues. Economic is one part, and in that economic issue also maybe another component could be infrastructure, which could be made in a way that becomes the infrastructure which is very smart infrastructure, quality infrastructure. See, this is an important issue which also has been discussed over a period of time. In fact, I again recall when Australia was having presidency for G20, we had made a point, I was also the Sherpa that time, I had said that why not look at infrastructure as an opportunity for making global growth happen. Infrastructure is one area where when you actually make investments somewhere, many countries benefit. For example, let's take infrastructure of China. Many of these iconic buildings in China have been designed maybe by the French architect, maybe the lawyers who were involved in finance, because there are the finances maybe in US or in Europe, the lawyers may be based in London, the arbitration could be in Singapore, the material could have been supplied from Indonesia, the material, the basic material, the manufacturing could happen in Indonesia, but basic material could have come from Brazil. So infrastructure has a potential to pull economic activity globally. So even if you put infrastructure in one country, the supply chain is such that benefit can accrue to several other countries in the world. So services benefit, manufacturing also benefit, and therefore infrastructure in itself will kickstart economy. So today, creating quality infrastructure, because infrastructure is one, and this particular focus even in Osaka was on quality infrastructure. I think that again is an important issue which again will help not only creating infrastructure to bridge the gap that exists between developed and developing countries, but could benefit all the countries in the world, and therefore this was again, I would call it as a part of that. The second broad grouping, I can put it, one is the economic, I'll come to social last, but second part would be the issues related to environment, energy and ecology. Unfortunately, over the last few years' time, and particularly after 2008 again, we are ignoring the reality of climate change. Climate change is a reality which now common man is suffering from, and he is experiencing it. So climate change is no longer an academic issue to be discussed in some forum somewhere outside of the place where this actually, the effect of that is felt. But climate change has now become a reality in which so many countries are suffering huge damage out of it. The natural calamities have increased, disasters have increased, costing billions of dollars to countries which suffer from it. And sometimes the problem is that the country which suffers the ill effect of climate change is not responsible for climate change. the cause of climate change is the greenhouse gas emissions. And the greenhouse gas emissions also are historical, because those greenhouse gas emissions which have already happened are causing climate change today. So it is not today's greenhouse gas emissions are causing climate change, but historical emissions are causing climate change. And therefore, UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, subsequent protocols have always recognized this reality, and therefore they decided to act on it. In many areas, we accepted the fact that those countries responsible for historical emission must contribute to it by way of money, technology, everything. And even in Paris, in fact, after Kyoto, after UNFCCC, Kyoto, one of the important hope was Copenhagen. And Copenhagen, unfortunately, not much happened, but luckily in Paris, there was a good agreement. President Obama from US, your President Hollande from France, who was actually hosting it, Prime Minister Modi actually played a very key role in arriving at that agreement, and we had a very good deal. Unfortunately, this Paris deal is something which we should not accept. So even in Osaka, when we are talking about climate change, there was a proposal that we should not mention the reality of Paris deal. I said, how can we ignore the reality? Paris is a reality, it happened. It's not that it didn't happen. And again, we cannot say that what happened there was wrong, because there are only 20 countries here, cannot decide that what 200 countries have decided is wrong. And therefore, we forcefully put forward this view. And India strongly believes that we must deal with climate change. Every country must contribute to it commensurate with their capacity as well as responsibility. And that is what the common and differentiated responsibility rule applies. And therefore, we put forward this strong view, and luckily, 19 countries have agreed to put climate change as a very important place. This is a 19+1 declaration. But this is something which is an extremely important development, that again, the G20 has tried to refocus the attention on climate change. Other aspect of climate change is energy. In fact, energy is a cause of climate change in a way. The kind of energy used is responsible for greenhouse gas emission. Of course, not just energy alone, there are many contributors to climate change. The greenhouse gas emission can be even caused by land use change. For example, when you change land use from forestry and try to do something else, it will emit climate change, emit greenhouse gases. But energy is a very important component of it. In energy, changing global energy mix is a very important development. And therefore, we must focus on that. India has taken initiative under the Prime Minister's leadership of International Solar Alliance, which in fact will significantly contribute to changing global energy mix. And if you don't change global energy mix, don't move from fossil fuel-based energy to clean and green energy based on renewables, you will never be able to change and bring down the emission level to substantial level. In fact, as I was saying, that common man is experiencing today, but before common man felt it, the scientists had already warned us, and almost unanimously, that climate change is going to be a serious issue, we must deal with it. And therefore IPCC, which incidentally was chaired by Dr. Pachauri, an Indian, had also unanimously, virtually, had said that you can say with almost 95-96% of accuracy that it is human-induced climate change, and therefore we must try to work on it. And today, unfortunately, despite that, despite agreeing in Paris to take corrective action, there has been almost no action. In fact, there is going to be COP25 in Chile in next few months' time. I hope the declaration which is made in G20 will provide the necessary impetus to make strong action on climate change in future. Other aspect that was also discussed in Osaka, and this is part of a communique, is environmental issues, which also deals with issues of oceans. In fact, this is a very important part of the declaration, I would feel. Because, over a long period of time, and biodiversity, which is actually not necessarily here, but also G7, which is going to discuss biodiversity. Actually, we have seen that human and biological existence is guaranteed by the fact that biodiversity exists in its pure form. For a long period of time, we have seen that we have destroyed, more or less, a good part of terrestrial biodiversity. Oceans have more biodiversity than even terrestrial biodiversity. So marine biodiversity is very important. Now the marine biodiversity is also under serious threat because of use of plastic, because of overfishing, many reasons. And also because of what is happening on the ground is affecting the oceans. Because oceans are warming more because of the emissions that are happening. And when oceans warm more, even some of this biodiversity in marine place will also get destroyed. And therefore, it is our common responsibility that we must save the oceans. We never realize oceans are important. I was saying that day to some audience that oceans are like mother. In fact, I was saying after the press conference in Osaka. So, I was saying oceans are like mother. See, mother, take everything every wrong thing child does, mother accepts it and just ignores it. But after some time, mother also gives up if it reaches the tipping point. I think the oceans are reaching that level wherein they no longer can take all the nonsense that is happening terrestrially and therefore they are suffering from it. Incidentally, oceans are also carbon sinks. Many of these huge emissions can be absorbed by oceans, but now if oceans also give up finally, then what is the hope for the humanity? So the entire biological life, the human life, everything else depends on that. So therefore, I am very happy that, and we strongly support it, that the G20 had decided to work on this issue in a very important matter. Then of course, there are the issues which I would put it as social issues, which is like Society 5.0. This is, I would feel, Japan's contribution. Japan, as you know, we cannot call it, no society can be perfect, but Japan's quest to become a perfect society is laudable. And therefore, they are trying to work on many important issues. And as Ambassador said, Japan is also an aging society. In fact, there probably a time will come when there will be more older people not working than the people who will actually be working. And this will not happen only to Japan. Incidentally, this is something which we must also accept. It is also going to happen to India after some time. Because when our population will plateau, when today young population, and we take pride in saying that India is a society of young people, those young people will not remain young for life. They are also going to age, like me and Ambassador Man Singh. And therefore, when we age, we are also going to have a problem of this aging society. So it's not just a question of one society. It's a challenge the global community will have to face over a period of time. And therefore, Japan's idea of 5.0, and there our Prime Minister also made some very significant contribution when he said that we are also working on some digital aspect and many others. And therefore, this caring society, using modern technologies to ensure that human face is available to offer services, but with proper support of technologies of idea. And therefore, this again, I would call it a free, open, sustainable, inclusive society. That's what Japan feels, and we obviously will definitely feel happy about. Other social aspect was women, and there is no other country no country would oppose this idea, but India strongly supports it. And the women and the people coming first, that's the idea of any societal development, which again, we feel it's a very right type of thing. Then there is, of course, a very non-controversial issue of global health, which again is extremely important, and I don't need to elaborate, but this is something was also the part of an important discussion there. I would put two more issues before I conclude. One is what Prime Minister proposed. Because G20 is a global forum, we must deal with global issues. One of the big global issue today, which is also local but has global dimension. And if you don't deal with it globally, you cannot solve it locally. Also, unless you go to the root cause, and that issue is terrorism. So Prime Minister proposed that there should be an international action on terrorism, because we have seen the roots of terrorism maybe in some other country. The conspiracy could be hatched in some third country. and a actual target may be country like India eventually. So unless we can have a global action on this, the money that flows into terrorist network also can flow from different parts of the world, and therefore global action is necessary. And that's something which Prime Minister proposed, and it was very welcome idea. The second aspect of this, probably not necessarily only terrorism, but other one which India put very strongly is issue of economic offenders. When you commit an economic crime in one country and you flee that country to escape the legal process of the country where you have committed the offense, I think the global community must cooperate and ensure that we really work on that. So this again, Prime Minister put it very strongly, and I think this again was quite well received by even all other countries in the world. I feel one issue which did not come up that highly, but it should be in the earlier G20, which we should try to work on, is the issue related to global taxation. As you know, there is a proposal which G20 has accepted in the past. It's called BEPS, Base Erosion Profit Sharing. And that's so what happens is, because of global supply chains coming up, you are seeing now that activity happens in different levels. So where do you tax that activity? And when you tax it, how do you tax it? Also the other dimension is the e-commerce. Because the e-commerce is very difficult to say where the transaction actually takes place. So how do you deal with these issues is going to be an important challenge. I think we'll have to deal with that over a period of time. Other aspect is related to technology. And I think digital world is a reality. The fourth industrial revolution that we talk about is largely going to be driven by the digital activities. And therefore, how do you deal with the digital issues, and how do you actually have digital governance? How do you make sure that privacy is properly taken care of? How do you make sure that data protection happens properly? How do you make sure that digital world will also ensure that it happens in a way that it helps humanity? That's a very important aspect of it. And therefore, I think we should try to work on it. For example, artificial intelligence, which is part of a new technology. Nobody can stop any case, even if somebody wants, any country cannot stop a new technology from coming into. But we must look at the various aspects of it. For example, artificial intelligence, we should also look at the ethical issues related to artificial intelligence. Because when you are going to create, through artificial intelligence, a new kind of a society, how that society will be governed because of this, there will be ethical issues involved. In fact, I remember about a few months back, in Delhi itself, in India International Center, Dr. Bhaskar Rao had organized, I don't remember, but Ambassador Mansingh was also probably present. We had called top-class people discussing about the ethical aspects of artificial intelligence. So technology is a must. Technology will be part of our future life, but we must deal with technological issues in a way that it should benefit human being in a proper manner. So I think these are the few important issues. I don't want to tell you all about it. But as Ambassador mentioned a little earlier, since India will be chairing or presiding, or will be having a presidency of G20 almost less than 2 years now, almost. Therefore, we must start preparing for it. It's a great opportunity for India to provide leadership, thought leadership, to many of these important issues that global community is facing. And therefore, I welcome your idea of working in a way that we can actually kickstart that process now and start thinking about the issues, because what happens, one is the logistical part, which is also important. Where you're going to host everything, that I call it as a hardware of G20 meeting. But these particular issues are going to be the software part, which are also going to be far more important. And therefore, we must start preparing for it. We must ensure that India provides a new type of thought leadership to these issues. And not only from India's perspective, only from a country point of view, which we'll do definitely, but also on behalf of rest of the world who is not present in the G20 meeting. So our idea should be that G20 must focus on issues which G20 countries are concerned about, but G20 also should be conscious of the fact that there is a world outside G20 which also needs to be heard and properly acted upon. So I think India would like to do that, and therefore we'll definitely take it forward. So once again, thank you very much for being here As I said, many of you are so knowledgeable that probably we look forward to working with you as we go along so that we make G20 India presidency a great success and a most, probably the best one as it would happen. So really looking forward to that, and thank you once again for organizing this great event, bringing so many people together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that panoramic tour d'horizon is what the French will say. It's almost an untranslatable word. But I thought that was excellent in terms of the catalogue of issues. I may have missed mentioning that the RAS G20 Digest that we have brought out, a bi-monthly one, the May-June is the first issue, which I had the honor of presenting to the Honorable Sherpa, is available on our website. So that's something that I want you to look at and give us your feedback. I would also say that you all know the RIS website and our email addresses, and we would be very happy to hear from you the issues that India should focus on. I really am taking very seriously what the Honorable Sherpa has said, and there is no point in just a few experts getting together. That will happen anyway. But I think especially academicians, think tanks and others who are here, young people who are here, if you think there are issues which involve India, which should get traction in the G20 summit in 2022, I would urge all of you to think about that now. It really doesn't make sense to do it, if you allow me, sir, the Indian way, like a marriage. You do it at the last minute and then you're talking about how to make it a successful summit. We're trying to do something from the RIS, and I'd be very grateful if you can give us ideas, which we can, because giving ideas is the first step. We will still have to flesh it out, then get consensus. And this is not easy. But at least we can put it to people like Honorable Suresh Prabhu and my colleagues so that they can then push it forward in the number of G20 meetings that you will be attending. So let's make each meeting all about India and about the 2022 summit. At least that's my fond hope.